Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about traveling to China and everything relating to what you should do, what not to do. It's one of the most fascinating places, but honestly a little bit intimidating for first-timers. The language barrier, the digital payments, the Great Firewall, it feels all a bit overwhelming. But here's the thing. With the right preparation, China isn't just manageable, it's incredible. So let's start yapping and dive right into the 20 things that you should know on your first trip to China. All right, before you even get into China, here are a couple of things that you should know. Tip number 1, the visa and digital arrival card. As of 2026, many countries, including the US, UK, Australia, and most of Europe, they qualify for a visa-free entry up to 15 days. But check your country-specific status on the Chinese embassy's website before you book anything. Now, if you do need a visa, I'm not gonna lie, the application process is tedious. It's one of the most thorough applications I've ever filled out, and I had to go into the consulate in person to get it processed. If you are eligible, definitely try to get the 10-year. It's completely worth it, even if you don't know for sure right now if you'll be going back. But what I didn't know was however long you get isn't exactly up to you. The visa and the time frame that you get is completely dependent upon the consulate. And for my first time, they only gave me 1 year because my passport was about to expire. So my advice is to get your passport renewed first and then apply for the visa. One more thing, as of November of 2025, there is a new digital arrival card that you have to fill out online before you land. Once you complete it, screenshot that QR code immediately. Save it to your photos, email it to yourself, and maybe even print it out. Because airport Wi-Fi in China can be a little spotty, and if your VPN isn't set up yet when you land, you might not even be able to pull it up. Tip number 2, the Great Firewall. Okay, you may have heard the infamous Great Firewall, which blocks Google, Instagram, YouTube, WhatsApp, basically everything that you use daily, which means you need a reliable VPN. But here's what people mess up on. They download a random VPN and assume they're all set to go. Even VPNs get blocked constantly, so what works today might not work for you tomorrow. But here's the rule. Download at least 2 different VPN services before you leave. I recommend Let's VPN and Astral. Both have been reliable for me. Also, a classic one is NordVPN, and for the most part, this did work for me, but there were some parts of China that Nord didn't work. So once you have downloaded the VPN, and make sure you've got the whole process set up, get them onto all of your devices, your phones, your laptop, your tablet. Test it out before your flight and make sure they are working, because once you land, if neither VPN connects, you're digitally stranded. Tip number 3, the CCC Power Bank Law. This one's weirdly specific, but super important. If you are traveling with a portable charger, which most people do, since everything is conducted on your phones, it must have a clear, legible CCC marking or a capacity label to it. The CCC stands for China Compulsory Certificate, and it's a safety standard that most portable chargers will need to have. I've watched security officers in Chinese airports confiscate perfectly good power banks because of the label, it was worn, or unclear. And they don't care if it's $200 anchor or however much it is, because if they can't verify the capacity, it's getting tossed. Tip number 4, the pre-app verification. Before you even get onto that plane, download Alipay and WeChat Pay. These two are the 2 digital payment apps that run China and will most likely use all of your screen time. Cash is basically obsolete there. Street vendors, taxis, and everyone pretty much has used QR codes and their phones. But here's the catch. If you wait until you're in China to set up everything, you'll hit a 24-hour security review. These apps need to verify your passport, your international credit card, and that process can take days. So just imagine landing in Beijing, you're starving, and you're not going to be able to buy any food because your payment app is under review. So do this at home, upload your passport photos, link your visas or MasterCards, try multiple cards if the first one doesn't work, and complete the verification while you're at home on your home Wi-Fi. By the time you land, you'll be ready to scan and pay immediately. WeChat is used more for locals and Chinese people, while Alipay is used more for foreigners and tourists visiting China. But even if you don't think you'll be using WeChat for payment, still download it because this will be the main form of communication between you and all of your new Chinese friends. Okay, now that we have mapped out the pre-trip checklist, let's talk about how to actually navigate and function in one of the most digitally advanced countries out there without speaking an ounce of Mandarin. Tip number 5, the double phone strategy. This one sounds a bit over the top, but just bear with me. If you are serious about staying connected, consider bringing 2 phones or at least having a phone with dual SIM capabilities. And here's why. Phone number 1 is your primary device with an international eSIM from a company like Holofly or Airolo. This lets you keep your VPN running and access Western apps. Phone number 2, or your secondary SIM slot, has a local +86 Chinese number. Why? Because a lot of services in China require SMS verification, such as hotels, delivery apps, train bookings. They'll text you a code, and if you don't have a local number, you could get locked out. You can buy a Chinese SIM card at the airport for like 50 RMB, and it'll save you so much hassle. If 2 phones feel like overkill, just get a dual SIM phone and use both. One for VPN and Western apps, and the other for your local Chinese services. Trust me, the flexibility is worth it. Tip number 6, Navigation 101. Google Maps doesn't quite work in China, so what's the alternative? For English speakers, Apple Maps is surprisingly solid. It has English labels, decent routing, and it works pretty well for major cities. If you are getting to and from your hotel or to a tourist spot, Apple Maps will get the job done. But if you want the most accurate, up-to-minute local data with real-time traffic, bus schedules, and even subway exits to use, you need Gaode Maps. It's what the locals use, and it has all the best spots to eat. But what's the catch, you might ask? It's almost entirely in Chinese. They have been slowly rolling out the English version of the app, but to be honest, it is a little bit clunky and not super reliable. So my strategy is to use Apple Maps for general navigation and English reliability, but download Gaode Maps for when you need precision. You can screenshot the directions or use your phone's translation camera to navigate the Chinese interface. Tip number 7, the mini program ecosystem. All right, this one's a little different, but once you get it, it'll all makes total sense. In China, almost everything runs what they call on mini programs. So think of them as tiny little apps that live inside those bigger apps. Restaurant menus, event tickets, bike rentals, public Wi-Fi, they all use these mini programs. Now, you'll find these mini programs mainly on Alipay and WeChat, but they are also on other major apps as well. And there are 2 ways to access them. The first one is scanning QR codes. So you scan a QR code at a restaurant table or a bike, and the mini program opens up instantly within whatever app that you are using. The second way is you can browse and find mini programs directly built in onto the apps. So if you open Alipay and scroll through, you'll see Didi for rides, Meituan for food, and train bookings. They're all just sitting there and ready to use. Now, there's no separate downloads needed, and it's basically like having dozens of apps inside one app. My advice is just spend some time exploring when you first download these apps, see what little mini programs are already on there, and get comfortable scanning QR codes. Tip number 8, the camera translation hack. Let's be real, unless you speak Mandarin, you're going to feel a little bit lost. Menus are in Chinese, signs are in Chinese, QR codes, instructions are in Chinese. So while there are signs in English and most of the larger cities people will understand a little bit of English, China is still one of those places that can be a little bit tough if you don't speak or read the language. So before you leave, download Google Translate and install the offline Chinese language pack. Then whenever you're at a restaurant staring at a menu that you cannot read, open the camera translation feature. Point it at the menu and it'll give you an instant English overlay. Now, it's not perfect. Sometimes braised pork belly gets translated into stewed meat stomach, but you kind of get the gist. Another translation feature I recently discovered are my AirPods. Now, they were gifted, and at first I didn't really think that they were going to be reliable, but they actually work pretty well. My mom speaks frequently to us in Mandarin, and my boyfriend doesn't understand an ounce of it. So we tested this out and we put it on to him, and he was able to actually pick up the overall gist of the conversation. Now, it's not flawless, but for basic conversation, it gets the job done. All right, this next section, let's talk money. Tip number 9, link multiple cards. Here's a harsh truth. International credit cards get blocked all the time. Your bank sees a transaction from Shanghai, panics, and freezes your card for suspicious activity. It's infuriating. So link at least 3 different international cards to your Alipay. Visa, MasterCard, Amex, spread them all across different banks as well. That way, if one gets blocked, you have backups just ready to go. And as for WeChat Pay, I had a bit more of a harder time getting my US bank cards onto the platform, and it wasn't the most user-friendly. So my advice is just to stick with Alipay, which is a lot more user-friendly if English is preferred over Mandarin. And here's a bonus. Notify your banks before you travel. Tell them you'll be in China for X days. It doesn't always prevent blocks, but it definitely helps. Tip number 10, the 3% transaction fee. Okay, this one is a little bit sneaky, but it will save you a little bit of money. So Alipay charges a 3% international processing fee on transactions over 200 RMB. Under 200 RMB, no fees. So if you are buying something that costs 400 RMB, don't pay it all at once. Instead, what you want to do is split it up into 2 separate transactions. I know it sounds a little bit tedious, but that 3% adds up, especially over a 2-week or 3-week period that you're in China. Now, not every single merchant will honor this, and sometimes it's not even worth the hassle. But for bigger purchases, such as like hotels, tours, or fancy dinners, it's an easy way to save 50 or 100 RMB on the fees alone. So just ask the merchant if you can pay in multiple transactions, and most of the time, they won't say no. Tip number 11, passive versus active scanning. Now, this one's a little bit more technical. That sounds a little bit boring, but it's actually super useful. So whenever you're paying in China with Alipay or WeChat, there's actually 2 ways to scan the code. You can either scan the merchant's code or the merchant can actually scan your code. But sometimes, especially with international cards, the system flags your transaction as suspicious and declines it. This happens a lot or at street vendors or small shops. And whenever that happens, flip it around, open your Alipay pay screen, which generates your QR code, and let the merchant scan you instead of you scanning the merchant. For some weird reason, this bypasses a lot of security triggers. I don't know why it works, but maybe it's just a backend thing, but I've had this transaction go from declined to approved just by switching whoever is scanning. So if your payment fails or it's not being accepted, just try the reverse and have your QR code scanned instead. Tip number 12, the emergency cash stash. Now, despite everything I just said about digital payments, you still need physical cash. Not a lot, 500 RMB should be plenty, but here's why you need it. 3 reasons. 1, a dead battery. If your phone dies and you can't pay digitally, cash is your lifeline. 2, rural areas. Not everywhere in China has perfect network coverage, and some small vendors still prefer cash. 3, emergencies. If your payment app glitches or your cards all get blocked, you do need a backup plan. So with cash, you can withdraw this from ATMs at the airport or major banks. Just make sure your debit card works internationally and doesn't charge any fees. Bank of China ATMs are usually reliable for foreign cards. All right, now that you have all your payment stuff sorted out, let's talk about getting around China. China's transportation infrastructure is insane. High-speed trains, spotless subways, pretty cheap flights, but here are some things that you should know. Tip number 13, master the high-speed rail. All right, if you're traveling between cities in China, you need to take the high-speed rail. It's fast, affordable, and honestly, one of the coolest travel experiences. But here's how you book it. Download trip.com before you go. It's the easiest platform for foreigners. Once you open the app, you'll see an option to book train tickets almost in like a mini program. Click that, enter your departure and arrival cities, and it'll pull up the entire schedule with all available trains. You can see departure times, ticket prices, seat classes. Pick the one that works best for you and book it. But here's the catch. You need your passport number. That is pretty much your ticket. You don't get a physical ticket or a QR code. So when you get to the station, you just walk up to the automated gates, scan your passport, and the gates will open. Well, they should open. Oftentimes, because it's a foreign passport, you may not be able to get through the automated gates. If that's the case, walk over to the person and you should have no issues trying to get through manually. Make sure that your passport number is exactly as what you inputted. One wrong digit or a letter and that system will not recognize who you are. So double check before you finalize everything. Tip number 14, Didis over taxis. Let's talk about getting around cities. Didi will be your best friend. Essentially, it's China's Uber and it's built into Alipay as a mini program, so you don't even need to download a separate app. With Didi, all you have to do is type your English destination into the app will translate it for the driver, and the price will be locked and fixed. No surprises, no miscommunications, no getting scammed. Plus, Didi drivers are rated by passengers, so they actually have an incentive to be professional and take the direct route. I've taken dozens of Didis across the cities, and honestly, I've never had a single issue. It's cheap, reliable, and completely stress-free. Oh, also, pro tip, if you are in a rush during peak hours, you can pay an extra 5 RMB or they'll have it in the app for priority pickup. You'll get matched with a driver way faster. It's totally worth it if you're trying to catch a flight or a train. Tip number 15, domestic flights. Okay, if you're flying domestically within China, give yourself plenty of time because Chinese security is thorough. They manually inspect power banks, check battery capacities, and sometimes even open your bags to examine electronics. It's not the fastest, and I've been in security lines that took 45 minutes, and that's not even during peak travel season. Plus, there are some domestic terminals that are massive, and you might have a 15 to 20 minute walk to even get to your gate. And here's another pro tip. Instead of booking any domestic flights on Google Flights, which is what I typically do, have your relative or friend in China book it instead. Somehow, and I don't know the reasoning or the math behind it, but the same flight that I was looking at on Google Flights was like 35% cheaper when my local relatives booked it. So again, if you have a local SIM card with a Chinese number, you might be able to access cheaper fares. Tip number 16, and my favorite tip, the Meituan app, which is also my best friend. All right, so this one is actually a life hack. Meituan is China's everything app for food delivery, grocery delivery, you name it, and it pretty much delivers. And it's shockingly cheap and fast. If you need anything like dinner, snacks, or just don't want to leave your hotel, just open up the app and within 30 minutes and sometimes even 15, it'll be delivered straight to your lobby and sometimes even directly to your room. I used this in Chengdu when I realized it was starting to pour when I was on the bullet train, and literally before I even got to my hotel, my umbrella was already there. The app also has an English interface and the prices are very, very low compared to Western delivery apps. One caveat though, the delivery drivers will call you when they first arrive, and sometimes they only speak Mandarin. So if you are confused, just go to your hotel lobby and hand the phone over to the receptionist and they should have it all sorted out. Final section, and these last 4 tips are about staying comfortable, safe, and actually culturally aware during your trip. Tip number 17, the bathroom situation. Let's start with the least glamorous but most important tip, which is public bathrooms in China rarely have any toilet paper or soap. Even in malls, train stations, don't really expect this. So always carry tissue packs and hand sanitizer with you. Let's address the big elephant in the room, the squat toilets. So I grew up in China and we left when I was 5. So I really thought by now they would have phased out these squat toilets, but they are very much still a thing. So the Chinese don't actually believe that sitting down on anything is sanitary, which is why squat toilets are prevalent throughout the country. But that's actually your advantage because in every single bathroom, there will be a couple of these sitting down toilets, and there's usually no lines for them. But do be warned, sometimes when the lines get really long for the squat toilets, locals will go inside these sitting down toilets and they will actually stand on the toilets. So I do really highly recommend also bring some wet wipes so that you can wipe all of that down. All right, tip number 18, China is largely still very much a smoking country. Okay, so smoking is a lot more common in China than you might expect it, and I mean everywhere. So restaurants, hotels, and even places marked non-smoking. So if you are sensitive to smoke or you just want a guaranteed smoke-free environment, here's what you should do. First, stick to international hotel chains like a Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, or IHG. They usually enforce non-smoking policies and they have better air filtration. Local budget hotels can be a hit or miss, and sometimes if you get a clean room, you luck out, but other times when you walk in, it might smell a little bit like that smoky odor with all the ashtray and all that good stuff. If that happens, don't be shy. Just ask for a room change and usually they will accommodate it if you're polite about it. Now, here's where it does get a little bit tricky. In a lot of Chinese restaurants, especially for evening meals, or the ones that have those like private rooms, everyone smokes and there's no ventilation. So if you book a private room for a group dinner or get invited to one, just be aware that smoking at the table is very normal. If it bothers you, stick to more modern restaurants or international chains where smoking indoors is less common. It's just one of those cultural differences that you have to navigate, but at least you know what to expect. Tip number 19, the tea house scam. So there is a classic scam that's in more of those major cities such as Beijing, Shanghai, where friendly students will approach you and invite you to practice their English. And they usually invite you to a traditional tea house or some type of an art gallery. And what happens is you'll sit down, and as soon as you order tea, suddenly you're handed a bill for like 500 or 1,000 RMB without having agreed to anything. They'll claim that you agree to it, and if you refuse to pay, they get pretty aggressive and they will pressure you until you pay. But here's the rule whenever you see this happening. Politely decline invitations from strangers. If you want to chat, just do it in public, on the street, but the moment that they say they will invite you somewhere else, end that conversation. Chinese people are incredibly friendly, but legitimate locals don't usually randomly invite tourists to tea houses. And this brings us to our last tip, tip number 20, personal space and cultural differences. So this one is definitely different compared to the West, and in crowded places such as subways, tourist attractions, or lines, lines, people stand a lot closer to you than you're probably used to. And honestly, spatial awareness isn't really a thing. People will bump into you, cut across your path, or stop suddenly in front of you without a second thought. It's not really rude and it's not even personal. It's just normal in a country with 1.4 billion people where space is actually a premium. So here's a little thing about lines in China. Even if you leave a small little gap between you and the person in front of you, someone will step right into it and snatch that up. It's not considered cutting. It's not considered rude. So whenever you're waiting for a ticket, going through security, or ordering food, stay close to the person directly in front of you. I know it sounds weird, but if you don't, you'll be standing there forever while people just keep cutting it. The key is don't take it personally. Once you understand that this is just a cultural norm, it's way easier to just kind of roll with it. If you're not being disrespected, this is just how things are in high density spaces. All right, and there you have it. 20 essential tips for traveling to China, from visas to VPNs to payments, transportation, and cultural etiquette. You're now equipped to navigate one of the most complex and rewarding destinations out there. Look, I'm not going to lie and say China isn't challenging, but it's also exhilarating, beautiful, and unlike anywhere else I've been. The sheer scale of everything is honestly incredible. If this video helped you, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below with your biggest China questions. Safe travels, everyone, and remember, embrace the adventure. I'll see you in the next one.